Good evening, detectives. Welcome back to Blackwood Academy. Over the past 4 weeks, investigators have documented Professor Vanessa Hammond's final day, examined the crime scene inside Office 214, interviewed faculty and staff, and completed the post-mortem examination. This week, the investigation takes another significant step forward. Earlier today, investigators authorized the release of several important developments, including the forensic laboratory report for evidence item E-01, newly reconstructed documentary evidence, excerpts from Margaret Hale's interview, and updates regarding several individuals connected to the investigation. Let's begin with the laboratory findings. Last week, Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Sarah Turner explained that while the medical examiner's office could determine how Professor Hammond died, identifying the object responsible for her injuries would ultimately become an investigative determination. Earlier today, the Bryan County Sheriff's Office Forensic Science Laboratory released its examination of evidence item E-01, a bronze faculty award plaque recovered from Office 214. Laboratory testing identified Professor Hammond's blood, hair, and neural tissue on the plaque. The distribution of that biological evidence was found to be consistent with the injuries documented during the post-mortem examination. Investigators have concluded that evidence item E-01 is the object responsible for the fatal injuries sustained by Professor Hammond. The laboratory also reports that while several latent impressions were developed during processing, most were incomplete or unsuitable for comparison. The only identifiable latent impression recovered belonged to Professor Hammond herself. Additional trace evidence examinations remain ongoing, for the first time since this investigation began. Investigators believe they know what killed Professor Hammond. Determining who used that plaque remains the challenge. In addition, last week investigators announced the recovery of what appeared to be a partially shredded, handwritten letter from Professor Hammond's office. Following further analysis, investigators now know that assumption was incorrect. The shredded document was not a letter. Instead, it was a newspaper article accompanied by a handwritten note signed only B, a name investigators have become familiar with through recent interviews. Both documents have now been added to the investigative file, and more information is pending. Further, last week I mentioned that investigators had begun interviewing Blackwood Academy counselor Margaret Hale. At that time, no interview transcript was available. That has now changed. A portion of Margaret Hale's interview has now been approved for release. Were you familiar with Dr. Vanessa Hammond?
Yes, of course. We were colleagues and friends.
Did the two of you work together professionally?
Often. Our roles overlapped more than most people realized. Students don't divide their lives into academic problems and personal problems. Neither did Vanessa.
Did Professor Hammond ever discuss concerns about students with you?
In general terms, yes. Specific students, only when appropriate.
Dr. Herman Vail mentioned that B. Langford spent a considerable amount of time with Professor Hammond. Can you tell me about their relationship?
Professor Hammond mentored several students. B was one of them.
Can you tell me about her?
I can tell you she's one of our students. Beyond that, I'm not willing to discuss a student.
Is that because of counselor confidentiality?
It's because students deserve privacy. Their rights and my obligation don't disappear because a tragedy has occurred.
Did Professor Hammond ever express concern about B. Langford's well-being?
Professor Hammond cared deeply about her students. That's all I'm prepared to say.
When did you last see B on June 8th?
I'm not certain. It was a busy day. Students were coming and going.
Did you ever see her with Professor Hammond that evening?
I don't recall.
Do you know why Professor Hammond would have kept a handwritten note signed only B?
No.
Did you ask B?
No.
Why not?
No, because I don't conduct investigations, investigator. You do.
Whether Margaret Hale genuinely lacked additional information or simply chose not to provide it remains for detectives to decide. As the investigation continues, detectives have also been conducting routine background investigations into several individuals connected to Professor Hammond's death. Earlier this week, investigators contacted Stonyvale Junior Academy in Stonyvale, Michigan, where Claire Donnelly worked prior to accepting her position at Blackwood Academy. What they learned was unexpected.
Claire worked here for a little over 3 years. She was dependable, kind, the sort of person who always seemed to know what needed to be done before anyone asked. She and Silas Carlisle were engaged. Silas taught 8th grade science here at the academy. They were planning a fall wedding. Then, one afternoon, Claire found him. I've never forgotten that day. The police did what they had to do. They questioned everyone who might have known something. And because Claire found the body, she was one of the people they looked at very closely. That wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was watching people around here make up their minds before the investigation was over. They whispered. They speculated. Some of them were convinced Claire had done something she hadn't. Months later, investigators arrested the person who had actually killed Silas. Claire was completely cleared, but by then she'd lost the man she loved, and she'd lost the sense that this place was home. When she accepted a position at Blackwood Academy, I was happy for her. I thought she was finally getting a chance to start over.
The investigation into the death of Silas Carlisle concluded with the arrest and conviction of the individual responsible. Claire Donnelly fully cooperated throughout the investigation. She was never charged with any offense and was completely exonerated. At this time, we have found no evidence linking the Stonyvale homicide to the murder currently under investigation in Pennsylvania.
The Bryan County Sheriff's Office has likewise uncovered no evidence connecting the two homicides. Even so, the similarities are remarkable. This is the second time Claire Donnelly has discovered the victim of a homicide, and the second time investigators have been forced to examine whether she played any role in the victim's death. Whether those parallels point toward guilt or simply unimaginable tragedy remains for detectives to determine. For now, Claire Donnelly remains one of several individuals under active investigation. As investigators concluded their work at Blackwood Academy today, the investigation took another unexpected turn. At approximately 4:32 p.m., Bryan County 911 received a call requesting emergency medical services at Blackwood Academy. The patient? Headmistress Eleanor Whitmore. Witnesses report that Mrs. Whitmore collapsed inside the administration building shortly after meeting with investigators. Emergency personnel arrived within minutes and transported Mrs. Whitmore to Bryan County Medical Center. At this time, investigators have not released additional information regarding her condition, nor have they indicated whether today's medical emergency has any connection to the ongoing homicide investigation. As always, detectives are cautioned against drawing conclusions before all the facts are known. This week has brought answers and new uncertainty. Investigators now believe they have identified the object responsible for Professor Hammond's death. A document once believed to be a shredded letter has revealed itself to be something entirely different. Margaret Hale's interview has become part of the investigative record, and Claire Donnelly's past has added an unexpected layer of complexity to an already difficult investigation. Now, another member of the Blackwood Academy community has become the focus of investigators' attention. Whether today's medical emergency proves to be nothing more than an unfortunate coincidence or another piece of a much larger puzzle remains to be seen. I'm investigator Philomene Ashcroft. Thank you for joining me for this week's case update. I'll see you next Monday. Until then, keep your eyes open, keep your notes organized, and, above all, keep asking questions.